Good evening, YouTube. Today's video is the best tasting coin video you're ever gonna see. Stay tuned. Well, I want to welcome you to my channel today. Kind of a different video. It is a holiday. It is Monday. I believe it's May 28th. I can't remember what day of the month it is, but it is Memorial Day. And so what I thought I'd do is actually do something a little different. I was watching a video not too long ago on YouTube where there was a gentleman that actually engraves coins as part of like his YouTube channel. And I thought, what an interesting channel that somebody would actually go through the trouble of showing how they grade coins. And then I got to thinking about it a little bit, and I thought, man, I really don't have any real talent. And maybe that's kind of negative and probably not really true. But sometimes I think, like a lot of people, we start to get to feel like when we see somebody else that's really, really talented doing something that we might begin to feel like we're not the most talented person in the world. And not that I feel bad, I don't. I was actually really happy for him. But I wanted to share a little video of something that I do, and so that I've heard that I do well, if you've ever tasted it. This is a pretty simple chips and salsa recipe. So basically it's a pico de gallo. The actual recipe where I got this from actually has a few other ingredients, and we're going to kind of keep those out of the video today just for the sake of simplicity. And the simple reason is that most people want something that they can just snack with chips on or something like that, and they're not looking for a dressing, for a taco, or something of that nature. And so I decided what I would do is just go ahead and show you how I make my chips and salsa recipe, and effectively give you sort of a recipe. Like I said, it's not the whole recipe, and there are a couple of other ingredients. And if you're a purist when you're making pico de gallo, the main thing about pico de gallo is actually how you dice the chilies, in this case the jalapeno, and the onions, and not the onions, excuse me, the tomatoes. Because the true pico de gallo is all about the cut when it comes to the fresh ingredients. But because I'm not the best with a knife, we're going to go with just a rough cut. And so in addition to the one jalapeno, you're going to want a medium yellow onion, like I have here. Now, that's another thing too. I use a yellow onion. It has a little stronger flavor. A true pico de gallo, whether it's from Mexico or from Texas or something like that, actually uses a white onion. And the simple reason is the white onion doesn't have as strong a flavor as the yellow onion does, but I use the yellow onion for the stronger flavor. And I am not a big fan of strong onion flavors in food, but it seems to go well. The yellow onion seems to go well with this particular recipe. So you'll notice I basically 3/4 a yellow onion here, and I'm just going to make a few cuts on the side just to help with the dicing. And I need to be very careful with this knife because you might notice I'm being a little careful with it, and it's extremely sharp, and I don't want to lose my finger on YouTube. Although that would probably make for a pretty sensational video. Definitely not the effect that I'm going for here. But this is kind of a good recipe if you've never tried to make this before, especially if you're a single person. I'm a single guy. I enjoy cooking. I do a lot of cooking, and I've gotten some compliments over the years, different things that I make, and this is actually one of them. This is a crowd pleaser. This gets me invited to a lot of get-togethers, you know, not for the wrong reasons, but just that if I get invited to a get-together, it's usually, hey, can you bring that salsa that you make, and we'll look forward to seeing you. And that's fine. I have no problem with that. I really enjoy not only tasting this salsa, but I also enjoy the chance to get together with friends and family and to have a nice evening. So just what you want to do is just fairly finely chop the onion. In fact, as far as onion goes, most people, especially if it's a yellow onion, don't want a big bite of an onion with their chips and salsa, and be careful about doing that. don't want as big a bite with that, and so you want to make sure that you don't serve somebody salsa that could leave a bitter taste in their mouth. And onions, if it's too much or if it's a very potent onion or too big a size, could actually do that. And even if you like the stronger flavor, most people don't. They prefer a more mild flavor, especially if they're not accustomed to eating foods from other cultures. And so you want to be careful about that. So after you take the 3/4 of the yellow onions, medium to small yellow onion, you want to take about a 1/2 cup of cilantro. Now here's another thing. Many people do not have the palate for cilantro. They actually taste a soapy taste. And so if somebody says, well, you know, I don't care for that, don't press it. Don't say this is good, because not everybody has the taste bud for this. But what you want to do is take about a 1/2 cup or a little more, 3/4 of a cup of cilantro in your hand, and you want to roll it in a ball, because essentially what you're doing is what they call a chiffonade. You're just kind of cutting up some spices, and you can hear me doing that here. One thing you want to be careful of is you don't want to overcut it. The idea is just to release the flavor, and you can smell it. Like I can smell this right now. It's really strong, and I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm actually it's in danger of bruising the cilantro, and you don't want to do that. If it starts to turn dark green, you can actually see it. You've cut it enough. You don't want to do any worse than this, because you're just bruising the cilantro, and it's not doing any good for the consistency of your salsa or the flavor. So be careful not to do that. And there's that. So that's real quick. A simple thing you can do. Nice thing to have on an afternoon. It's very refreshing. Now the other thing that I do, and I kind of left this open to debate, and I'm only going to show you a can without a label. What I do is I add already diced tomatoes, and you can get diced tomatoes with chilies in them, hot or mild or whatever, and you can just choose your favorite brand. This is like I think this is like a 10 ounce or 14 ounce cup, and you want to add it to the mixture here, as you can see. And the reason why I use the diced tomato is it saves a lot of time, rather than actually taking a fresh tomato, dicing it up, and then adding additional chilies into the salsa. But a lot of people will use the diced tomatoes that they actually cut up at home, and I have a buddy that does that, and he's a pretty good cook, and he's always told me to use a fresh tomato. I cheat a little bit, not because I'm lazy in the kitchen, but just because I don't like to go through all the trouble of adding all of the different flavors on top of one another. So maybe that sounds lazy, but it's a lot of work. The other thing you want to do is after you've done that, you see that I have a lime here. It's kind of hard to do this on camera because I'm using my iPad. But you want to take a lime, a whole lime, and you want to squeeze it into the mixture that you have. And I hope you can see this. Not sure that you can, but you want to squeeze it on top of the cilantro, the yellow onion, the jalapeno that we diced, and the can of diced tomatoes. And then take the other half, and I just threw a seed in there. And then just take the other half and squeeze that into this mixture as well. Now the last thing that you want to do if you're making this salsa at home is you want to make sure that you give it a generous amount of salt and a little bit of pepper. And believe me, it's important. This type of salsa really doesn't come together unless it's got a generous amount of salt and a bit of pepper. Believe me, you can oversalt this, and so that's something to be careful of. Sometimes people forget that the chips that this is served with are actually salted, and so they forget that this chips and salsa recipe could actually be oversalted. The other thing too is you want to keep in mind when you add the lime, to this mixture as I did earlier. You want to be careful because the lime starts to cook this salsa. And if you're not familiar with that cooking technique, be careful because it could actually overdo the salsa and it will leave you potentially in a very uncomfortable situation if everything starts to wilt and the salsa is no longer fresh when you go to serve it. The other thing is a lot of people, and I'll show you here, a lot of people will actually put it in the refrigerator for a few hours overnight, and that's a really good thing to do. It really develops the flavor when you do that. But the only thing is it gets much hotter. The longer it sits in the refrigerator, the hotter the salsa is going to get. So you want to be careful about that. Well, this was just a brief video on how I make my pico de gallo and chips and salsa, as you can see there. Whoops. Let me do this right. As you can see there. And I hope you enjoy watching this video. More importantly, I hope you enjoy eating your chips and salsa. Have a great night, YouTube. Thank you. Bye.